Hello, Internet. I just got done listening to some Eminem, some Kesha, and some Imagine Dragons, so I'm all hyped up to do this afternoon live stream. So thanks to my in-laws as well for taking the older kids. So this is the first live stream that I've done in mid-afternoon. So I'm pretty pumped to figure out if there are going to be more people on here or fewer people than our Friday morning 8 a.m. weekly live streams. So I've got a fun person with me today as well. My brother might be hopping up. This is not my brother. This is a guy named Dylan.
Hey.
Look at that. His name is up there too. Dylan Ritchie. This is who this guy is. He's been crushing it in the real estate space. He is also pretty new, I guess. When did you buy your first property? How long ago?
A little over a year ago.
Yeah.
We've really been just dominating the last year.
Nice. Yeah. So this is going to be pretty exciting.
I'm glad you feel that way. I'm excited, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Looking forward to figuring out if we're going to have any questions. You're right, Lewis Porter Jr. 20 seconds heads up. But hey, that's how I roll, man. The life of having too many kids. Planning is tough. So I guess before these questions start rolling in, do you just want to introduce yourself a little bit? You've been doing some real estate investing for about a year now. What were you doing with your time and extra money before then?
Before then, honestly, I'm a nurse by trade. I got my bachelor's, and then shortly after graduated, got my master's. I focused on nursing, and then we started. I keep saying we. I'm now recently married. My wife invests with me, so it's not just me. That being said, we had a lot of excess capital, and we're like, where do we start parking this? We had the foresight and the thoughts. And we have very big wants in life. Like, what do we do with this excess money now to make all that possible? And just did some loose research on a couple different areas. Naturally, paper assets came up and stocks. But real estate is tangible. I can touch it. I can see it. I live and am born and raised in a very awesome rental market. So it just made real estate super simple.
Look at this.
Hey, Will.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah.
Nice. The trifecta.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we've got three people locked and loaded for all your questions, Lewis Porter Jr. He's the only one that's commented so far. So nice. That's why I mentioned him. What was your first property that you purchased, Dylan?
Our first property we purchased was we found on MLS. It's a duplex. We bought it retail. It was tenanted on both sides when we purchased it, and they marketed it that way on the MLS. But I recognized the area. We focus on 2 zip codes really, and while this particular property did not share that same zip code, it was just quite literally a couple streets. Due to a technicality, it was not in that zip code. So we recognized it and we bought it because even on the MLS, the numbers made sense as is, but we knew both sides individually were each about $275 a side under what they should be renting at. So we kind of bought it knowing once we turned those units, it would go from a good deal to a really great deal. And it was our first one.
How's that worked out for you? Have you been able to increase the rents as you expected?
Yeah. So we've owned that property a little over a year. We bought it in September of 19. We turned one side. When we bought it, actually, both sides were rented by family members. Mom lived on one side, and then an adult son, he was in his mid to late 20s, lived on the other side. And we knew that right away because we had texted the listing agent. She gave us all the information and then more than what we really wanted off of probably 5 texts within minutes of watching it hit the market. We actually got an email notification, and my wife and I were playing cards at our house, and it's 5-minute, 10-minute drive. So we actually went and drove by and saw it. So based off of the agent's information on the current leases, it was a good deal. So we turned the second side. The son moved out, and we rehabbed it, and that is now at market rent. The mom still lives there, actually. She's been a good tenant.
You increased her rent to market?
No, we have a good relationship with her. She's actually one of our few tenants that knows I'm the owner and now property manager as well. Most of our tenants, now that we brought property management house, think I'm just at the property manager. They see the shirt and the little polo. They don't necessarily connect the dots that I'm the owner. So I digress. Crystal knows I am the owner. We've been transparent with her. She's a good person. We let her know, hey, you are $275 as is under market rent. So long as you live here, we're going to increase your rent for about $50 after about 6 months of developing that relationship. And she pays all the utilities on that side. So it's a good deal. Because if she were to move out, we would have to put several grand into it to actually get that market rent. So we're cool with hanging out with her. It's a good relationship.
Awesome. Now, so that was 1 year ago. What were your original real estate goals as you were buying that first property?
So our first goals were on the vision board. It was a quick little marking of something along the lines at first, 50 units. We gave ourselves something ridiculous, like a 13-year runway. It was 50 units that cash flow after our expenses and potential property management. We're property managing it ourselves now, but we built in up to 10%. So even if we paid the most expensive property manager 10% a month, we would still make $125 a door. So we worked all that math backwards, and that came out to be 50.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you. I answered your question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, where are you now? How many units are you up to?
Right now, closed in either our name or entity, we are at 16 units. In the very near future, we're going to be at 19 rental units, not including our primary residence that we own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have the opportunity to grab a couple more in the near future as well.
So that escalated quickly then. So you've been averaging one property per month or more.
When you look at it that way, when you break it down by months, yes. But we also hit a very big swing for $6,000 down on a seller finance deal. We grabbed 9 units in one swoop.
Gotcha.
So it's funny, you average it out by month. That looks great when you do it by month, but to get those 9 units start to finish, once we had a verbal agreement all the way to closing date, took about 9 months. So it's funny you average it that way. That sounds great, but it took 9 months of patience to actually get what's half of our portfolio right now.
Nice. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess how's your mindset changed from, because that's a big jump going from, okay, over the next 20 or 30 years?
13 was the goal. Is that what you're asking?
13 years.
We had the 50 doors. Yeah. So we said by the age of 40, when I put that dry erase marker ink on the board, I was 27 in that very moment. So we said 13 years. My wife's about 8 months younger than me. So technically she would be 39 when we got that goal if it played out.
Gotcha.
That way. So
how have you had to change your mindset going from 13 years to now? If you keep up at the pace you're at, you'll be there, in the next 2-3 years.
Change? How did that change my mindset? You're saying the growth? How did that change my mindset?
Right.
So we made that really long runway. So for mutual vocabulary, I think, Will, you and I, and probably a lot of people on the channel talk about stretch goals. I did not make a stretch goal. With both my wife and I have even conservative, we have very, very strong W-2s. We're extremely fortunate that being in the nursing field, we both have our masters. As far as conventional financings of that route, a lot of investors talk about in the real estate field how a full-time investor struggles with that. We are fortunate at this point. We have not. I mean, we have conventional lenders that will hand us money, essentially. Mm-hmm. Again, kind of digressing, to answer your question as far as changing, I don't think we really had to. I think, if anything, we need to stretch that goal more because we made a very easy goal. Even if we did conventional 15% down on a single family, or for most properties for 2 to 4 units, then we could put somewhere between 20 and 25 down. Mm-hmm. that 13 years was a math equation I solved out. It was not a stretch goal current state unless something catastrophic or super significant, like my wife and I got very sick or something like that were to happen. So if anything, we've had to stretch that goal more. I think if we do the 13-year runway, we would have more than 50, even being conservative.
That makes sense. So have you put any thought yet into what you're going to do after you get to 50?
I don't know if I would change anything. We're probably going to continue to grow, especially if we keep acquiring in the same, I'll say generically, like field. So most of our deals outside of that very first property I shared, we bought it retail. It was on the MLS. We bought because we were very comfortable with that market. Again, it was just across the river from two zip codes that I feel like we know in and out. We bought maybe 10% equity in that property. Since then, we've averaged buying somewhere between 20 and 35% equity in every property at worst since we've acquired since that very first one.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, we've only got one question so far, and that is from 3D of Tom, and he wants to know where you're located.
I didn't share that yet. I am in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
I am born and raised.
Where the properties cost $10. Yeah.
Yeah. When you average that on other states, cost of living is very cheap here.
Yeah. So I guess to both you and Will, one of the most common questions that I get when I do these live streams are, what are the steps that you would advise to start if you have no money? Will, what's your input on getting started with no money? How would you do that?
I would say it'd be very dangerous to start with zero money, because you can buy a house with not much down if you negotiate it with the seller. But I mean, what are you going to do when the AC blows out or the roof goes? Where are you going to get your money from then? Or especially if it's a rental property, you got to get this stuff fixed quick for the tenant. So I would be very cautious for someone trying to do real estate investing with no money.
No.
So, I mean, it's smart to have no money in the actual property, but you got to have a reserve built up on the side if you're going to do it like that.
Yeah. Louis Porter Jr., he's a funny guy. He says, "What's up with all these Ohio guys? I can't get anybody from anywhere else in the country. You know this is 50 states, right?" Yeah.
Hey, Louis, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah. Louis Porter Jr. is from somewhere in Florida as well. I think he's in southern Florida.
Will, how many properties do you own in Florida?
Oh, one. So my wife and I have one rental here, which, I mean, we bought it for $178, and now Zillow says it's worth about $210. And we've had it for 3 years. So, we put 40 grand in it for a down payment, and now that money's doubled if we were to sell it.
Right.
So,
right.
That makes
tenants
sense.
in there paying the mortgage. So it just doesn't cash flow like a Dayton house would.
Mm-hmm. Are the numbers comparable at all to Dayton?
I mean, a Dayton house is not going to double in value, or you're not going to double your down payment.
Right.
Inside of 3 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's spots in Jacksonville where you can get a good return if cash flow is what you're going for. So it's just there's a lot more competition here. So there's tons of wholesalers, tons of cash buyers. We even got foreign money coming in. A lot of these real estate folks that do investment properties will say that they'll have people from South America calling in, making offers on houses, cash same day. So,
yeah. Louis Porter Jr. says he's in Tallahassee. I don't know what that's like as far as Tallahassee compared to Jacksonville goes, but what's your advice to people in that are trying to invest down in Jacksonville where you are, knowing the difference between Jacksonville or Florida and Ohio?
I mean, you could always find deals. It's just a matter of you got to get your network built up. It's a matter of how much time do you have to put into it. I mean, my neighbor, he's a realtor, and he's buying a house right now for $50,000. So he'll have 10 or 12 grand down somewhere in there. And
What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
His mortgage will be $350 a month, and he's got the place rented out for $950.
Wow.
And I mean, that mortgage includes taxes and insurance.
Yeah, it's escrow.
It's a full PITI. $350. So
That's pretty comparable to what we do here.
yeah. Yep. Pretty much exact same numbers. So the properties are out there. It's probably, you're just not going to find them directly on the MLS.
So for your Asian friend that bought that house so discounted in Atlanta or in Florida, do you know the story on how he found that motivated seller to get that much equity in that purchase?
I'm not exactly sure how he found it. I do know that he calls a lot of people. So,
gotcha.
That makes sense. Dylan, what would you say to people that want to get started in real estate with $0?
It's twofold. So if you're going to be that person that's bold and no matter what anyone tells you, you're going to push forward and actually try to buy a house or houses with no money down, you should be a phenomenal negotiator. Otherwise, I would continue to read and educate. Will slightly touched on it. It's great to buy property or properties with low money down, but you have to have that reserve, because while you don't get them every month or even every couple months, it only takes one phone call, and now you have, say a furnace goes out in the winter, you don't have a choice. You have to do that right now. It's a rental property, so you're probably not going to be able to finance it. You're going to need several $1,000s cash, and that check needs to clear within a reasonable amount of time, so you don't upset the HVAC person installing that must-have furnace for you. So,
Do you have any
educate if you're not comfortable with knowing that phone call could come.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for like reserves and how much you should keep in your reserves?
I've asked that question myself to a lot of very successful investors that own, when you start talking about like hundreds of houses and things of that nature, as you get more, it seems to be, if I notice a trend, you should probably keep several thousand per unit. But if you have a smaller portfolio and you only have a couple houses, it's going to be several $1,000s per door, depending on, each property is different and the age of it, as well as the mechanics. But anything mechanical, if you get a must-have repair right now, you're either looking at being real slummy. If you have a nasty plumbing leak and now your property is actually getting worse because that water is going to continue to damage the property. Mm-hmm. It's going to be several $1,000s per unit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't have a magic number. No.
I would just say do your analysis, do your due diligence on it, figure out what the worst possible thing that could happen to your house would be. Is it the furnace going out? Is it the roof needing to be repaired? And then find out how much that stuff costs and just have that amount set aside.
Yeah.
Now, I think in one of our conversations at some point, Dylan, you described yourself as being someone that is, has a propensity towards the whole analysis paralysis thing. What do you do or have you done in order to get over that?
In the last year, I'll even back it up. In the last 90 days, I think I've seen a lot of growth in myself, specifically on the analysis paralysis. Again, I don't think you can have analysis paralysis and still obtain some of the growth that, we've been fortunate to have in 1 year. That being said, to get over that hurdle, I started networking. Anywhere and everywhere I go, I start talking with people, just to kind of get a comfort, get their side of the story, what they've experienced, and even some of the things that I don't know, you can learn through others' experience. So kudos to you guys. Will and Ryan both have been a huge help in getting over that analysis paralysis, because I know I can call either one of you guys on a phone call and be like, hey, this came across my desk. Here's what I know. What questions should I ask further? Or is this kind of a situation where you just, fire the gun and ride the bullet?
Yeah, fire the gun and ride the bullet. I like that. I also like that William made an appearance.
That was nice. He just ran right across the bag too. It was perfect. That was premeditated. That was definitely premeditated. It was executed flawlessly.
What do you say about analysis paralysis, Will?
I say that it can really slow you down. You got to do your due diligence, but you don't want to take too long doing everything. So you need to do what you need to do to feel comfortable moving forward. Whether it's talking to mentors in the space, people who have been there and done it before. Read one more book, not 3, just 1. Get the info you need, and then move forward.
That's funny. You say one book, not 3, and here I am on the channel, often recommending that people read 10 books.
Yeah, the reason I
I'll
recommended
piggyback
one
on
more
what
is
Will
because
just said. I mean, that's perfect. It's a simple switch. So for all those that have that analysis paralysis, if you can just make some minor adjustments and you actually educate yourself and learn that area, that market. Again, I try to buy in 2 zip codes. Will I buy stuff outside of that? Yeah, if it's a really good deal. But as far as my tunnel vision, it's on 2 zip codes in the whole state of Ohio. So if you can learn that and you feel comfortable with that area that you want to buy in, you can flip that switch from analysis paralysis to, okay, just do my due diligence. And once it checks those boxes, and you have to have set goals, but once you know what due diligence is for you, then yeah, you pull the trigger then, or not, and you look at the next one.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Now, so far, both of you have mentioned networking. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit more, and like how specifically has networking helped you?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll take that one first. Will's dealing with the situation there in the background. So to clarify, you're asking like how did I start networking, or like what did I do when I started networking?
Yeah, just like to someone that's like just getting started, how would you I guess further define like networking? Like what do you mean by that? So somebody that's like not familiar with that term in general.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just how it's helped you. It was a 2-part question.
So how to network and how does it help me? So honestly, a bunch of the reading and education and people that I have networked with all say a very comparable thing when it comes to real estate specifically is tell everyone what you want to do. Make those check boxes like what you want to buy, what you want to do, and then tell everyone. Because guess what? Everyone either owns a house or rents a house that's owned by someone that may inevitably be motivated to sell it. And once you start swinging there, you just find other people that either buy houses in the same area and maybe you can learn from, or you stumble upon people that may want to actually sell you a property that fits your criteria. So just tell everyone, especially once you know your stuff, tell everyone that you're comfortable with what you want to do, what you're trying to achieve. And if they don't know someone, they probably know someone else that, hey, here's this number, call Ryan. He buys houses in Dayton, Ohio. And I think he actually buys in that zip code that you buy in too. So, that conversation, it's just waiting for you to find it.
So you have found, it sounds like you found deals just by telling people and having the conversations with other people who might not even be involved in real estate investing.
So yeah, to connect those dots. So we talked, your first question to me was what property I bought. That was off the MLS, that duplex that we eventually brought up to close to market rent. Every deal we've bought since then has been off of a relationship. I bought actually another single family home off of that very person that I bought that first duplex from. 6 months later, I sent him a letter because I knew he had a couple other properties in the area. And I bought one house off of him, and he actually only owns one other property, which I'll probably acquire from him as well. And so that one example, just from that closing and looking him up, I sent him a letter, and he called me within 7 calendar days of sending that letter.
Nice. And what I think is really cool about how you are going about acquiring properties is you've also, what did you say about like yourself and your childhood and your diapers?
I've bought several properties now from either people who have changed my diaper or I've bought properties where my diaper was changed in the last year.
That's super cool.
Bought 3 that way.
Nice. Well, Will, what do you have? What do you want to share with people just getting started in real estate investing?
So you were asking about networking earlier, and networking is very important because not only the real estate people that you run across, but also all the contractors that you'll need. An HVAC guy, a plumber. I mean, we get tons of main drains switched now. So you could run across people that will help you in all these different categories. And what I do is a lot on the money raising side. So just through telling everyone what I do, then a lot of people are willing to help out. That's how I met one banker who hooked us up with this awesome loan. So it's just
Is that the
getting
line of
out
credit?
there. Yeah. It's an unsecured line of credit that I thought it was pretty common for banks to have. I knew nothing about it really, but it turns out it's just this one bank that I found so far that does it.
Wow. And that was just from a casual conversation of talking about, hey, I'm Will Ingram. This is what I do. I'm buying up all of Dayton, Ohio. I need more capital.
Yeah. I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting here in Jacksonville.
Wow. So, perfect.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I need to network for my day job too, do mortgages for folks. So help folks get their primary residence or investment properties. So help people on the financing side.
And right now you're only able to do loans in Florida, right?
Yes, only in Florida. So working on other states. Well, really just Ohio.
Preferably. Yeah. If you could focus on, any other of the remaining states first, Will, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you guys are just now joining us, we just had a little bit of a bump in viewership. Then if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the live chat and we will answer them. So these two are also experts in real estate investing. And I think between the three of us, we can find at least one answer. And thanks, Will, for being on the live stream, as you've just had a baby as well.
Thanks.
Is that your new baby's room that you're in?
Yes, this is my new baby's room.
Your new baby's not in that room as well, right?
No. Okay. She's in our master bedroom.
Nice.
So to clarify, you kicked out the newborn so we could talk about real estate investing?
Exactly. I was hoping she would be in her crib. That way she could start learning, right from birth, pretty much.
Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, for folks just starting in real estate investing, when you're analyzing your deals, a lot of people are always trying to hit home runs or be extremely conservative. Your first deal is probably going to be one of your worst ones. And then you'll make mistakes, you'll learn from them, you'll get over it, and then you won't make those same mistakes going forward. So just get a deal on the table and then work your craft from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like any craft. You need repetitions. So, I mean, if you think of start to finish, you have to find the deal, you need to analyze the deal, you actually have to get it under contract and acquire it, and then you have to manage it or come up with your exit strategy. You need repetitions in all four of those parts. So if you're just analyzing, you're not getting any repetitions in the following parts that come in that sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys can see this. If I put this on the screen, can you see it?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Will, I think this is a good question for you from Sacred Space.
Yeah, so does a refi require full docs? And
I'm going to go ahead and put this banner on here, too, that says we really don't know what we're talking about, and you should seek professional advice always.
So if you're going to refi in your personal name with a bank or mortgage lender, yes, you do require full docs. So, I mean, you can do bank statement loans, which those are a little bit different. You're going to pay a higher interest rate, and the loan to value is probably not going to be as high. There may be a few more rules on it. It might not even be a fixed interest rate. It might be variable. But there's ways to get around the full docs if you need to, but the full docs will be your cheapest interest rate.
That makes sense. And then another question that we have is thoughts on the importance of a W-2 job as a real estate investor. This is awesome because I am someone that has no W-2 job and hopefully, fingers crossed, never will again. And Dylan, you have you and your wife are both strapped down to some W-2 jobs.
If you want to get technical, combined, we have 3.
That's right. Yeah. And Will, you're right in the middle as well.
Yeah.
So you're on the verge of having a W-2 and not.
Yeah. It just depends on your strategy. I mean, a lot of these questions, I know everyone wants a magical answer. The importance of a W-2. Look, if you can wake up every day and grind, hustle, find motivated sellers, and then on top of that, find motivated people who want to park money with you to find that motivated seller and exit out of their property, then it's not important. If you're going to take your time and try to leverage the financing, there's a lot of benefits that come with having multiple strong W-2s or just one W-2. But overall, if you're motivated, I don't think it's overly important. You can get it done.
Yeah, it just makes the financing a whole lot harder without a W-2.
Yeah.
So if you're self-employed, you need at least 2 years worth of income for traditional financing to even consider you having income to your tax returns.
Right. And I think whenever I got started in real estate investing, I think I technically had or got paid on a W-2 basis for a little bit. But I think if you don't have a W-2 or you do have, if you don't have a W-2 and you don't have 2 years worth of like self-employment history, I think you should just consider it an obstacle. Kind of like Dylan said, I don't necessarily think it is of utmost importance that you have one. It just kind of changes or tweaks your strategy a little bit. So you can definitely work around it. The things that I did that was, in my opinion, creative at the time in order to get around it is partnerships. I know at the time I did not have a W-2 and Will did. So when we first partnered and started buying properties, all of the loans that we did initially were based on his W-2 income. And then as we put properties into our LLC that we own together, we started collecting the self-employed, like just the tax history. So since 2017 now, that LLC has been up and running. So now we have ample proof that we, know how to make money and spend it seldomly. So we are a little bit more bankable as far as our entity goes now. So you can get around, if you're self-employed or don't have a W-2, you can kind of get around it by partnering with people. Or what's another good workaround, Will? I know we've done it.
Raising private money.
There we go.
That would typically be more expensive too. People typically want to make 8, 10, 12% if they're going to lend their money to you. So it's a lot more expensive than the bank at 4%.
And to find access to it, we kind of touched on it earlier. It's the networking piece.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find someone who likes real estate or investing in real estate investors who also wants to make a return. So they have to have that investor mentality on their own set.
For sure. And because this is on the World Wide Web and more words means that you are being more articulate and clear about what we're speaking of, then if the SEC is watching, SEC has very strict rules and regulations around raising private capital that you should most certainly research and adhere to. And raising capital via networking is truly, for the most part, limited to friends and family. Nobody is soliciting for funds or advertising guaranteed returns. That's what you mean, right, Dylan? Just like, hey, friends and family. We buy a lot of rental properties.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sacred Space again. So he wants some clarification on K1s or 1099s. And I think, yes, K1s are for LLCs or entities that you own. So at the end of the year, all your profit, if you make a profit, is recorded on a K1. Similarly, if you lose money, then that's recorded on a K1 as well. So a K1 is what you as an individual, the business owner, receives at the end of the year. That's kind of like a one-page summary of your business's performance on your personal tax return. Whereas a 1099 is if you provided some sort of services to someone else's business and they paid you as the entrepreneur. So they're almost the same thing, except the K1 is an internal document for the business that you run, while a 1099 is the result, like somebody would issue this if they paid you for some sort of product or service. I'm not a CPA, as this disclaimer says, but I'm not so sure it's possible for you to put yourself on a W-2 if you own the business, depending on how it's set up. From my understanding, if it's a sole member LLC, then you cannot put yourself on a W-2 and you can't process yourself through payroll. It has to be done through the K-1. If the company or business that you own is incorporated and it is truly an entity that exists apart from yourself, then I think that is a possibility that you now pay yourself. But again, those have different fees with the states and different tax implications. So I would definitely just say that you should reach out to a CPA. You want to take this one, Will?
Yeah, multifamily. I mean, we do small multifamily. Most people would still be considered residential, not commercial. We do mostly 1 to 4 units. We may have made an offer on a few larger than 4 units, but we don't have any. So everything switches for some reason when you get above 5 units. Or above 4. It'd be the financing gets a lot trickier. You got to switch to the commercial side instead of the residential side. So and we're very focused, like Dylan was saying earlier, on one market. And what's in our market is older single family homes. So there's some multifamily to be had there, but we like the single family. All the costs gets put onto the tenant, whereas multifamily, you've got common spaces that the owner takes care of.
Mm. Yeah, I think every market has its own fun, unique history. One of the guys that subscribes to this channel actually just moved to Cincinnati, and he was discussing the differences between just like the housing stock between Arizona and here, and he was just impressed at how old all of our houses are because Phoenix was developed a lot more recently. So here in Dayton, we don't have too many really large apartment complexes, and I think the ones that were built in like the 50s to 70s kind of range. But in the areas that we invest in most areas, a 4 unit is about as big as it goes. I mean, we even have entire streets of just individual 4 units. It's like back in the 20s and 30s, all they knew how to do was build up to 4.
Yeah, and they'll be blocked out, and then they're surrounded by single family homes for the most part.
Yeah. But now where they're developing downtown, there's some larger apartment complexes going up. And then definitely in the suburbs of Dayton. Is that what they're called? The areas like Centerville and whatnot?
Yeah.
There's
exactly.
a lot of apartment complexes going up there too.
Like Will was talking about earlier with the appreciation in the market, with the Jacksonville property. So Dayton itself, no zip code, are you going to double your money, especially on down payment like you did. But if you go 5, 10, 15 minutes south, there are markets that are that hot.
Yeah, where the average home value goes from 70,000 to 180,000.
Right. And more. Yeah, when you get to like the Centerville and some of those areas.
So since you're from here and you are also an investor, how important do you consider school zones or like the schools to be in your analysis?
In my personal analysis, not as much, because the areas that we're buying in are school districts that you're going to get the C tier tenant. You might get a B plus individual, but the zip code in that area, because of the school systems and maybe some of like the amenities with it, they're C's. And then we have some property. If you do the A, B, C, D scale, we do have some D scale properties as well that don't have the greatest of public school systems.
So Louis Porter Jr., we need to rebuke him as a whole for saying that Ohio is weird. Ohio has been very good to us, Louis Porter Jr. And then, yeah, I mean, I think this is a really solid buy. It's easy for our brains that have, kind of gotten our feet wet in the residential space to really be more open and have a better understanding and just overall wanting to take the risk to buy a commercial property because it's easy to analyze because it still has that residential component. And you're kind of broadening your horizon by putting a laundromat in it. Perhaps that's what we should do at the bottom of the lounge that we have under contract. Maybe we should just put a laundromat in there.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that is it for the questions at the moment. Dylan, what was the biggest mistake that you've made so far in your real estate investing journey?
The biggest mistake we've made so far. I think learning what exactly our due diligence was, like what if we had to have a checklist, what those boxes we had to check to buy a property. Our first couple, we didn't vary. So we did eat some costs where, maybe we didn't pay attention to a roof. And next thing you know, you had lipstick on a pig. And you guys were talking about it earlier. You have to fix these things quick because when I'm asleep and my ceiling's leaking in, I know if I'm renting, I'm probably going to call my landlord. My bed's not supposed to be wet with rain. That's not how it's supposed to work. So I guess some of the due diligence things, we've eaten a roof, we've eaten 2 furnaces. We bought a duplex where both furnaces were just junk and we didn't investigate them properly. So in the end, they weren't crippling, but we were fortunate that we have, with our strategy, capital on the sidelines ready to go for those very phone calls.
Makes sense. Is there any way that you would have kind of changed what you're doing, or any way that you've modified what you're doing now?
Learning, like actively learning. So those same mistakes, kind of learned from those 2 mistakes right there. I learned a lot just from my own visual inspection. As long as when I go to a property, if I can pop off that cover, for the most part, I know kind of what I'm looking at, or if I need to bring in a professional. So as long as you continue to learn from those mistakes and you have that will to keep pushing forward, you're not going to let, that boo-boo cripple you. And now you're crippled by fear and you're gun shy to ever buy another property. It hasn't been that bad.
Will, what would you say it has been your biggest mistake so far?
Biggest mistake, I was thinking about those 4 lot links properties that we got with the construction of it, or the hiring the GC. So we paid them a little too much money up front. So I would always be cautious with the amount that you give a contractor up front, and then pay them as they're finishing the project, as they complete certain items, instead of just on a weekly, here you go basis. Because you can quickly find that you have paid the contractor more than they have completed in work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then you're at the mercy of that individual being able to budget your money.
yeah.
And outside of the court system, there's no way that money's coming back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
And a lot of times it's more of a hassle to go to court to try to get your money back than it's actually worth. So,
especially in lower price markets like the ones that we're in, where, you're right. Speaking of the types of markets that we're in, we've got a few good questions coming in as well. So this is a good one, Dylan. At what point, this is for you, buddy. What point did you consider yourself to be a successful real estate investor?
At what point did I consider myself to be a real estate investor?
Yep.
So I touched on repetitions earlier. Once I started seeing the same results per every one repetition, I knew we were on to something. Like, essentially, that was self-validation that this works. We can repeat it. We can do it over and over again. And not only that, much like you and Will, you guys have that energy where you're not in it just for yourself. Yeah, you're in it for you and your families, and you're doing all this stuff, but you both share a trait that I do, and I want to be able to take those repetitions and teach someone else how to do it as well. Once you start doing the same thing over and over and get the same result in a positive manner, that's when I think you can say, like, you're successful at not just investing, but that's anything.
So once you kind of found yourself in the groove, kind of knowing what to expect and how to handle things as they arise.
Yeah. The preparation up front, doing that homework, knowing how to start generating, some leads, and then you can consistently see things come into the funnel. You see that's great. Then you need to learn, okay, how do you get things through the funnel to the closing table in the real estate market, and you have to find out there's a couple of little steps along the way. But again, once you get everything flowing, you get repetitions at every single step along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can repeat that, that's successful real estate investing in my mind.
How about you, Will? What's your thoughts on that question?
I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, you know what, we will really have it made when we make it to this level. So in my mind, I didn't consider us to be a successful real estate entrepreneur, even though we've got 80 plus properties under our belt, which would sound pretty crazy to a lot of people out there. So
right.
I guess it depends on what your goals are and where you want to get to. So we haven't reached our goals yet. So are we successful real estate investors? I mean, we're doing a great job. We've got some great deals, learned our lessons along the way, but haven't quite reached the goals that we wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, I listen to too much Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn has this little bit where he says, if he just got done doing a seminar and a guy comes up to him and it's like, I know that I'm going to be successful if I can regularly make $20,000 a year and spend 90% of my time on the beach. And it's like, that's not necessarily the monetary goal that most people have. But he was saying if, a year later he gets word that guy is doing that, then he is most certainly successful in Jim Rohn's book. And he's accomplished exactly what life's all about. So, you definitely have the ability to design your own life. And I think whatever you really want to accomplish, and as Will's kind of alluded to, Will's sights are set a little bit larger than we've accomplished so far. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. But I can tell you some rewards that have come of it. I mean, as a result of real estate investing and kind of working for ourselves, I mean, we both just had kids. We didn't have to make a single phone call telling anybody we're going to be off or take a week or two off. We just kind of did it. So having the freedom and flexibility is always nice.
Absolutely. So take that, Dylan.
I would say, as someone that doesn't have that luxury, I'm very fortunate in all that I do have, but I've not experienced that one. So that sounds like success to me.
I like this question a lot. Can money be made in markets with bloated housing prices, or just look elsewhere? That's a good one. And great usage of the word bloated.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I can say this one since I live in Jax.
Yeah, for sure.
And our housing prices, I mean, we bought our house 5 years ago for $200K, and now it's valued probably over $300. So, I mean, when prices are going up that much, it can be hard to find good deals. Especially, I mean, we're a city of 1.5 million people. There's a lot of real estate investors here that are looking for good deals. So there's always good deals to be had. It's just a matter of you might have to do some more work to get in with the people who know where they are.
And there might be a little bit more sweat equity to be had. So at first glance, the property might just look a little bit distressed. But generally, the distressed properties is where, in really high-priced markets, from my understanding, because I'm not in one, distressed is where the equity and where the good deals are made. Or just the network.
Part two is if you compare Ohio or Dayton to Jacksonville, Dayton's got houses that were built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The part of Jacksonville I live in, all the houses were built within the last 30 years. So you don't have a bunch of distressed properties laying around. You got a handful of them, but not a lot. A lot can happen to a property in over the course of 100 years to get it to the point where you can get it at a pretty steep discount.
Yeah. I mean, I live in the Rust Belt quite literally. So you're buying up those old properties that were around at that time period and then trying to make them marketable in today's world, 2020.
All right. And here is another good question from Lewis Porter Jr. Have you bought enough property in one location to directly change the outlook and future of that property neighborhood? I don't know about that. So I would say no. And as Will and I were going around trying to raise all of this money, we had to put together a few presentations that, were great for corporate America people, but seemed very silly to the self-employed people and the small little real estate entrepreneurs that we are. But one of the statistics that they asked us to find was, I guess, how many properties are in the area. And what we came up with was Dayton has 75,000 homes, like single family homes. And of those, I think like 51% of those are rentals. So like 36,000 of them are rentals. And our portfolio is a little bit over 80. So I don't know in my head that percentage, but we have a very, very small percentage of the, or very small part of market share.
About 0.25% market share.
I was getting ready to say, on macro terms, it is just statistically insignificant, I think is the verbiage they use.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Consider ourselves successful investors.
Yeah, I mean, not to downplay success, but yeah, I don't think any of us three own enough to answer that one.
Yeah.
But I can tell you on a street level, if you were to get down to the street, Ryan and I bought 2 houses on a street where 8 out of 10 looked good. So we got the last 2 and we're able to fix them up. And these are properties that no one else would buy. I mean, they've been vacant, abandoned for 10 plus years. So we have the opportunity to go in there, clean them up, and make at least this one street look better.
Mm-hmm.
So it meant a lot to us, and I'm sure it meant a lot to the neighbors. Does it mean a lot to the city? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. But it gives us all the warm and fuzzies. Let's see here. If I own the property outright, is it better to cash out on a line of credit, or what's the best way to get the most out of the equity in the property to reinvest? What are your thoughts, Dylan? You own a few properties. You're doing a refinance at the moment.
Yeah, I'm doing a refinance. We're actually about to get a check for a little over probably $30,000 from one that was an investment property. The cash out refinance is going to be 75% loan to value. To this individual's question, I think first, we keep talking about it. What are your goals? Because if you only need, 2, 3, 4 properties free and clear to meet what you want, maybe it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Or if you're in this for the long haul and you have a 15, 20-year vision, you might want to pull the cash out of that property and, build that snowball and get it to roll into more. I'll share for me personally, we're trying to acquire properties. If I owned a property in free and clear, I would probably most definitely be pulling, if not the full loan to value, a large portion of that money out to use it to buy other properties. Because I know we are at 45% roughly of the number of units that we wanted when we first started.
So I guess let's kind of reframe this question. Line of credit versus cash out refinance.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. I apologize. I missed that.
It's all good.
I have both. I don't know how.
I could take this one. The line of credit's a lot better for working capital. So if you're looking at being able to reuse this money over and over again, whereas if you want a one-time cash out, then doing a cash out refi of a mortgage could be the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends. I mean, if you're going to be putting money on this line of credit quite a bit, or paying it down and then using it again, then that could probably be the way to go. And you got to look at what loan to value the banks will give you for each item. Maybe one will be higher than the other, and look at the interest rate for each of them as well.
I know. I think the way that I like to think of it is line of credits. If you're primarily going to use those as to pay off, like to pay for your roofs whenever they need to be replaced, or pay for the HVAC systems that need to be upgraded, then I think line of credits are good for that. But if you are talking about lines of credits on rental properties, and you want to use those for down payments, I think a cash out refinance would be a lot better. Now, I think HELOCs are different, as Will and I recently learned. On your personal residence, HELOCs can be used for like the long-term money. There's not like generally lines of credits on rental properties are more similar to like commercial lines of credits and have like a 12 to 24 month lifespan before they have to be either renewed or converted in the bank size, whereas the personal residence lines of credits could go for 10, 15 years. Let's see. We've got another. Oh, here's a fun question. He addressed it to me, but I'm going to let you guys answer this. I'm 17 and want to invest in Ohio. Problem is, I live out of state. Where do I go to network with hard money lenders? I would love to know what you're doing. What are your thoughts, Will? Because you're out of state.
Yeah, so real estate it's a local business, so you can invest out of state. I would try to start in state if at all possible. So, and you can find hard money lenders where you're at, but it'd be hard to find good general contractors to fix the projects that you end up with if you're out of state. So you can only do so much on the internet, and you know, in Dayton, a lot of the general contractors are probably not even online. They might not even have a web presence.
Yeah.
You know? So
That's
how
what
are
I
you
was
going to
ready
find
to
them?
challenge this individual on. You know, that's great, but I feel like I'm not an out-of-state investor, so I'm speaking from somewhat of a lens of something I've not personally experienced in my life. But I don't know if I would be comfortable with that on my first two if I didn't have a sound understanding of all the other pieces of real estate investing. The fact that I live local and I can actually go to my property if I absolutely had to be the person to go that way, I mean, that's an option. You would not have that. And I can meet people there and meet the contractor, get a feel for who they are, or the property manager, or whatever individual is interacting with me over our connection with real estate. That would be tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, since I own an insurance agency and we primarily insure rental properties and other real estate investors, I have a lot of clients that are out-of-state investors. And I would say a lot of them, their biggest issues are not necessarily finding contractors, but checking to make sure that the contractors actually did the work that they said that they were going to do, and that they're not being taken advantage of by the property management company. So the clients that I have that do a very good job at being an out-of-state investor regularly visit Ohio and check on their properties, and they have gone above and beyond to form solid relationships with one contractor and one property management company, and they kind of have their own little system down where, you know, prior to receiving payment, photos of the work completed has to be submitted. But the guy that I truly think does a phenomenal job, he's got like 12 properties here in the area now, I believe. And it helps because his wife works for Delta, so he gets to fly up here for free. But each time he is towards the tail end of any rehab project, he will fly up here just to make sure that everything was done the right way. So the stakes are high as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And hard money lenders, I mean, you can use hard money lenders, but Will and I don't know, hard money is expensive money. So if hard money is your only option, I guess it's probably better to own real estate and rather than not owning any real estate. But if you can start putting in the work via networking, just talking to people endlessly about what you're trying to do, and find private money, so that way you can circumvent the origination fees and all the points that are associated with hard money, then that's probably going to be in your best interest. But at the same time, if the deal's good enough, actually, you know what? I think, the most important part of this. He's 17. You need a lot of help first. I don't think you can legally sign contracts for another year or a few months. Right. I'm not so sure you could buy a home, right?
Yeah, I think you got to be 18, at least if you're going to go the traditional
I think it's 18 at least for
route.
credit card. So I would imagine for a house, that's
But you're
Probably.
taking the right steps. You learning the
Yeah.
info and getting set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even coming on here and asking questions like that. I mean, that shows a huge part. If I had a year runway where I couldn't pull the trigger on something, like no one would let me, you should really emphasize on networking with anyone and everyone and educating.
Yeah. So we've said network and education quite a few times. What's your favorite source of education, Dylan Ritchie?
Oh my gosh. So I am a rich dad, poor dad disciple. That's how I started. A lot of people in that long lineage, that book opened eyes that I didn't feel like I had before. From there, I grew education wise. I probably would say I then went to the bigger pockets route. That's actually how I met Ryan. But even during that part, pre-COVID, I've always had that comfortable personality going out and meeting people face to face. So I started actually finding and driving to different, it could be a Facebook group that I found where they said, hey, we meet at this local sports bar, and there may be like 5 or 6 of us. I was driving around finding all those small groups and learning from those people, because I knew I would find people that owned property in the area where I wanted to own them. And then I would just really sponge up anything and everything they had to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have a few clients out that live in California, and they said that there are groups of people in their area of California where they meet up. There's like a specific Ohio, LA real estate investors meetup. So they actually, now some are in Cleveland, some are in Cincinnati, and some are in Dayton as far as like where they actually buy properties. But knowing and being able to share resources locally with other people that also purchase properties in whatever state you're looking for is a good idea.
You hit it though. That key word was local. I think finding the local people is really where it's at, because you're going to get some of the understanding and knowledge that would apply if we were buying houses in California. But for instance, and what we're doing here, the 3 of us, we're buying houses that are on average are somewhere between 60 and 100 years old. So there's some very weird specialty niches that you have to know when you're going through those local properties you're going to buy. For instance, weird things like off the top of my head, knob and tube wiring. That's not a thing where Will's buying at. The knob and tube never existed in Jacksonville, Florida, but in Ohio, that's something that may be in use right now in our very own home.
Right. If this is the first generation of your REI life, what does your second generation look like? What are your long-term goals, Will? What do you have you set any real estate goals for your kids yet?
For my kids, no.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to use it to pay for their colleges, and teach them work ethic and how to run a business. And then, we'll probably still be in the reins when the kids are of their working age. So they'll probably have to start their own business of some sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying we won't help them out down the road, but what does generation 2 look like? Well, it's hard to tell. You're asking a 20-year from now question.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing if our kids choose to kind of run beside us in the business or do other things. But if you just mean like phase 1, phase 2 of investing, I think once we get to like the 120 property mark, I think that's what we've discussed before. 120 single family homes, or the 1 to 4 family units. Then we're going to try to start tackling the commercial real estate issues that are in the market that we're in, and try to figure out how to go about bringing in restaurants, hangout spots, or anything that like the community needs. So it's like solve the food desert issue in this market, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And for second generation, what does that look like? I'd really want the kids to understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur, whether they want to go that route or not. They can do something else. But just knowing that there's a different route besides corporate America to go into.
Right. And you only have to work for someone else if you so choose to, but not feel stuck to where you have to.
Yeah. And real estate's a great strategy, but there's other great strategies out there too.
Right.
Starting your own business.
Yeah.
If you're that person that's 17, it doesn't really matter. You just pick one. And if you have even your 20-year goggles on, you're going to be successful when you're 37.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really depends on where you're at in life.
I'm going to do that future value formula real quick. So 17 years old. So when you're 60,
I was like, yeah, wow.
that's 43 years. So assuming a 10% rate of return over the next 43 years. So every dollar saved now when you're 17 is going to be $60 when you're 60.
That's crazy.
That's 10%.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Jacksonville is looking to be South Florida in prices.
Yeah, we got a lot of folks coming here from South Florida. So South Florida got too expensive for them. They're coming up here to Jacksonville because I guess Jax cost about half, or a year or two ago, it cost half of what South Florida did. But now it's probably like maybe 30% less. Who knows? It's hard to tell. But Jacksonville definitely has a lot of people moving in. And when people are moving in, that drives up prices. It's just a supply and demand problem because there's not enough houses to be had for the amount of people that are coming here.
Mm-hmm. Look at that, Will. You got to thank you. Reinvest it. Try to get 40 doors in 2 years. That's an ambitious goal. That kind of goal makes me excited.
Whew. Yeah, so I would go with the cash out refi route over the line of credit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You would eventually need to get a line of credit separate, but not secured by a house. Find somebody that'll give you an unsecured line of credit.
Are there more opportunities investing abroad since the USA? Man, bloated and hastened. This is awesome. This is the live stream where people use unusual words to define housing prices.
Yeah, these $5,
Hastened.
$10 words. These are awesome.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I have no idea. I don't think I would be comfortable investing in anywhere that's not inside of America, only because things are going to have to get pretty catastrophic, or even more so catastrophic, for me to consider moving somewhere else. And I think if I were to move somewhere else, if America was, falling so far through, I think I would just go ahead and clock out and move to like a very small, remote village somewhere and do as little as possible for quite some time.
Right. Things have really gone astray.
And, one thing you got to think about here too is the U.S. has a great track record for properties and getting mortgages on those properties. So, I mean, we've been at it for a few hundred years now. Whereas I was talking with a guy from Poland, and he says that it's getting financing over there is extremely difficult because they've only got a 30-year history as a country. I mean, I guess they had a regime change or something else. I don't know what sort of historical event happened 30 years ago, but they don't have the history to get good financing on houses.
That's another good point. And our government has been nice enough to not forcibly seize property on a large scale yet either. I guess they've done so with gold, but not properties yet. We
take 30-year loans for granted, but I mean, a lot of other countries don't have 30-year loans per se.
Man, in your industry, some people even take 2.75% 30-year loans for granted.
Yeah. I hate that when I get people asking me, can you give me better than a 2.75?
I was going to say, what's the inside joke there? I would kill for 2.75. Where do I sign?
If anyone offers me a 30-year loan for less than 8%, I take it immediately, no questions asked.
Right. Especially on 30-year terms. Wow.
Yeah. Let's see. Hard money for flips that sells for $700K plus, and only if the spread is. Yeah, I mean, in situations like that, there's plenty of room to absorb the exuberant prices of hard money lending.
I mean, even if you borrowed money at 20%, your cost right there would be $400K. So 20% of that's $80,000. And you're still making what, $220,000?
If that problem was a solve for X can pretty much equal whatever, so long as you can manage people pretty quickly. Yeah.
Would a property in a land trust be protected if someone takes you to court and gets awarded a judgment? So this disclaimer is still rolling. So with that in mind, I mean, I think the majority. So in most places, land trusts are just a sheet of paper. They don't have any sort of like land trusts are what the deed would be held in, but then the beneficiary of that land trust would be another entity like an LLC or whatnot. I'm not sure about the legal protection, but all of the people that I know that utilize land trusts do so not for the liability protection, but for the anonymity. So these are people, real estate investors are a strange breed. There's definitely a lot of different people that this industry attracts. Some of the people are very paranoid and don't want anyone to know what they own or what they don't own. So I've got one client who has about 40 properties, and each of those 40 properties are in a different land trust with a different LLC as the beneficiary. And she invests in a very small town and wants nobody to know which properties she owns.
Wow.
For that same liability protection, because and this is a strategy, or what I have heard people talk or rationalize this strategy for is, let's say some sort of incident in which you may be sued does arise, then one of the first things that the attorney or the individual may do to figure out if it's even worthwhile to file a lawsuit against you is to try to figure out how many assets or how much you own. So if you type in, whatever the property owner is deeded at the incident location, if you type that into the auditor, you find the name of the deeded entity, and then you type that in and like 800 properties shows up, then you might be like, oh man, this guy has deep pockets. I might be able to win something. But it's just that one rink-a-dink property is attached to it. They might say, this is the only thing that person owns. Let's not go from here. So that's kind of the reason there. I don't think anything is protected, especially, I don't think anything is truly protected. So I think insurance is your first line of defense. After insurance is exhausted, the liability protection on that policy, or if it's not covered by insurance, then I think your legal structure is probably the second rung of protection. And then whatever that legal structure is after that is pierced, or if it is pierced, then it is anything that you probably own personally. That would be the third rung. I've put a lot of thought into this. That's why I went on that little rant. At one point,
you were prepared for that. I had one statement. I was going to say I've heard of people that are fearful of being sized up, in that manner when it comes to like a lawsuit. But thanks for being prepared, Ryan.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. At one point, I sought out right after I wrote my first book, Rental Property Insurance, an Investor's Guide to Insurance. I wanted to, because I was getting such conflicting information about like how people, deed properties. Because I've got one client who has like 50 or 60 properties in his personal name. I've got another client who has, several hundred properties all in one LLC. And then I've got, that other lady who has a separate land trust and a separate LLC as the beneficiary for each property. So I wanted to kind of write this book that does the pros and cons to each, but it's just one massive giant gray area with no conclusive information. So it's very difficult. Let's see here. Do you guys know if there's a place that breaks down what aspects of a house are estimated to be worth in percentages? Bathroom 10%, garage or bedrooms 10%, garage 20%. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know.
I think things like garages and bathrooms, stuff like that, probably broken down better by a dollar amount, because a garage door, I think, is $1,000, pretty much regardless of where you are. Mm-hmm. So, and then somebody's going to charge you a few $100 to go put it in. So doing that percentage wise would be difficult, but figuring out. But I mean, a bathroom vanity is a few $100s, So how much does it cost to get somebody to put it in? I don't know.
And that the labor
Cover on the finish too,
and the market that you're in, I think prices are more expensive elsewhere.
Yep.
I don't think wholesaling can possibly be regulated because it's America and we have the right to, buy and sell whatever we really want to. And I don't think America can actually intervene because, wholesaling is kind of founded upon like having the ability to assign a contract. And I'm not so sure why or how you could possibly regulate the assignability in contracts apart from the legal contract that may include the verbiage of this contract cannot be assigned. I think you kind of have to fight wholesaling on a brokerage level. So perhaps anytime a realtor has a property or whatever, they just, include this contract can't be assigned elsewhere. But as far as an individual, like if, as an American person, this is just me thinking out loud here. I don't really have an answer for this. As an American, I don't think historically our government should intervene on preventing me from selling my house to Dylan for $10 if that's what I desired to do. And then Dylan would have every right as an American to go around and sell my property for $30,000 if he wanted to. So I don't know. Well, things are crazy. The world is crazy. And Philly is not a good example of how America should act as a whole, despite its very, very good roots. But yeah, I don't agree with wholesaling. I think wholesaling deserves the backlash that it's getting. I would like to also say that I think it's very easy to be an unethical wholesaler. And I think that wholesaling, by and large, I would never want. I don't know. I think I talked about this before. Wholesalers just don't have the same fiduciary responsibility that realtors do. And I have a very difficult time coming up with a scenario in which the actual property owner would benefit more so from going to a wholesaler rather than a realtor, because the realtor actually has the fiduciary responsibility. Because if a property owner went to, wanted to sell their property for 20 grand, approached a realtor and said, "Hey, I want to sell this for 20 grand." The realtor might in turn say, whoa, this property and the market conditions, you could probably sell it for 60. Like, don't sell it for 20. Whereas a wholesaler, you go up to them and tell them that, and, their eyes get really big. They buy it for 20. They turn around and sell the contract for 60. So I don't know. Will, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the only where wholesalers can really be valuable is where realtors don't necessarily want to be. Like a realtor would have a hard time selling a $40,000 house because the commissions on that would be so low. If there's a neighborhood right next door where they can sell $150,000 houses, they'd much rather be in that neighborhood because these guys, the realtors, get a percentage regardless. So 3% of 40 grand is what, $1,200. The realtor would have to do a lot of work to make $1,200.
Right.
Yeah.
So whereas they can go 10 minutes down the road and sell a $150,000 house and make $4,500. So
Unless you just get the flat fee agent that's going to take a drive-by one photo, might even have like the blur of the camera trailing, and they pay $500 to put it on the MLS. But then again, I mean, they're essentially wholesaling.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, we have officially made it through the questions. I think the peak of this live stream, I think we had 16 people watching, I think. And then now we've got 9, and we've made it through all the questions. So I guess we'll, if you have any questions at the moment, just go ahead and throw them down there. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap up. Dylan, do you have any parting words of wisdom for the viewers?
My biggest thing is if you want to be a real estate investor, you should know your criteria, that what's going to make you feel happy per property. And then once you know that criteria, just stick to your plan. Don't let the noise from other people say don't buy in that area, or you should come over here and do this, or don't buy single family homes. You should buy 30-unit apartment complexes. Really, it's in my mind that simple. Find what the criteria is that makes you comfortable and will not make you lose sleep at night, and then whatever that is, pursue it with everything you have.
I like those words a lot. Yeah, I mean, especially in the heat of the information age, when you could find tons of people's opinions and even more strategies on how to make money out of nothing in real estate investing. You're right. Find one, pick one, stick with it until it either works or it doesn't. Pivot if needed, but by and large, identify your terms, identify your criteria, and stick to it. I think that's really smart.
But then just pursue it. That's the other thing. Don't get stuck with analysis paralysis. Once you know that and you're comfortable with it, and really the biggest thing is you have to be comfortable with going to sleep at night, knowing what you're doing is setting you up for the future. So long as you're not losing sleep with it, attack it with everything you have.
Yeah, I like that a lot. How about you, Will?
Yeah, I'll just say have fun while you're doing it. Figure out what you want and go after it, get it. And I mean, there's a lot of folks that'll tell you to diversify. I mean, people tell Ryan and I that all the time. We say, "Oh, we got 80 houses." They say, "Well, it's time to diversify to something else."
Yeah,
and it's
the phenomenal returns on our bonds that we're offering.
Yeah, hard pivot and buy paper assets only.
Yeah, it's like, well, we found one formula that we really like. It's awesome for us, and we're going to go after this till we get to who knows how many houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, don't feel bad about going after what it is that you want.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Awesome. Well, no more questions came in, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of this beautiful Sunday and answering some questions and talking about real estate with me.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, audience. It's been a lot of fun.
Good